Welcome back to the Ministry Without Hating It podcast, a ministry of Odyssey Haven coaching and counseling dedicated to the pursuit of answering the question, is it possible to do ministry without hating it? We have a theory that it just might be. I'm Chad Garrison. That's Brenton Hill right there.
I am Brenton Hill.
And once again, we are joined with our frequent, recurring guest and also friend, pastor, therapist, BrianJames McMahon. Welcome back, buddy.
And I am really enjoying being able to have more frequent conversations with you guys in this format. So thanks for engaging and inviting me to engage you guys.
It is our pleasure. Like, this is Chick-fil-A. We're so glad to have you here for sure. As we've said before, we've hosted you a few times, and those episodes centered around soul care, specific to the ministry leader. And in this season, and even moving forward, now we're partnering with you in a new way for some episodes centered around your Brave Conversation webinars. Just real briefly, tell us what that is and who that's for.
Yeah, so once a month, our team and the community at Church Woco hosts a free virtual webinar, second Tuesday of every month in the evening, where we bring together some people wrestling with what can the people of God look like. That so often the context that undermine viability in ministry of pastors and of communities is the human-to-human relationships and the ways that those break down. And at Church Woco, we really think there's some room for us to reimagine how we relate to one another and what are the implications for us as the people of God in our own flourishing and in the faithfulness of our ministry expressions in the testimony that we give to our world. And so the intent is each quarter we just pick one topic. And so going into Q3 of 2026, we're looking at honor as the general topic. And each month we break that down into a little bit of a subset of that. And so that was part of our conversation of saying, hey, I think these conversations are useful broadly to ministers and to people engaging in some sort of communal leadership or community leadership, small group leaders, lay ministers, senior pastors. And so an opportunity for me to share a little bit about what we're doing, but also give a little bit of a brief dive into these topics that I think have some pretty significant implications for pastors to sustain ministry without hating it.
Yeah. Hey, I see what you did there. Yeah, that's it's been a while since a guest has actually used the actual title. So thank you. I appreciate that. Okay, so you mentioned we're setting up the culture of honor. Why do you think we need to have a conversation then about honor?
I think this is a framework and a practice, like the idea of honor and how we honor and what honor is, that really is present in so many relational contexts and so present in the church, but it's often assumed what it is and what it means and what it doesn't mean. And I've had a growing concern that the way that we are talking about teaching, utilizing honor actually may not be aiding the flourishing of the people of God, and in some ways may actually be causing some unintended harm to the people that we actually care about in ways that I don't think is necessarily true to who God is, nor to what it actually means to honor. So,
okay, give us, all of you listening, some examples of what you mean when it comes to the things that are concerning you within that.
Yeah, so I think if we were to break it down, my concern is that we have utilized language and practices of honor to avoid hard conversations.
Okay.
That we actually unintentionally have created a framework around honor that says what it means to honor is to not speak bad about people. And that has some really significant relational implications when we think about that plays out, because it means that people get hurt, but they don't get to talk about being hurt. It means that people hurt other people, but never get held to account. It means that we create communities and contexts where there is just unspoken, unacknowledged breakdown in relationship. And our solution is just to leave community or to walk away from things or to then pick. We got to pick between who we honor and who we don't. That if someone has caused harm, but they hold value in the community, we might honor them, but not honor the person who was harmed, or vice versa, that we might honor the people who were harmed and dishonor. So like it creates a lot of complications in relationships when honor is equated to speaking well of someone, which I actually don't think that's what honor means.
Okay. So what does it mean? You set us up.
I set you up.
We're going off script. We're going off script a little bit, but yeah, go.
So in a lot of the work that I do, and I work with a lot of millennials and Gen X who are grappling with parental relationships and people who have raised them and cared for them. And the phrase that a lot of us hear often is that phrase out of Deuteronomy. This is honor your father and your mother, right? This is one of the 10 commandments, is honor your father and your mother. And actually, I hear it most frequently used by parents who are saying, you have the responsibility to honor me because I am your father or your mother. So I honored my father and mother, you need to honor me. And my wife and I were wrestling with this phrase, and we're starting like, man, the way that this phrase is being used, it just feels so uncomfortable, in the same way that in the church context we might have like honor the Lord's anointed, like don't undermine them, that there's this almost like you need to protect them, you need to cover them. There's this framework, and there was some ickiness into how we were experiencing that phrase being used. So we started to do this deep dive because we looked at each other and we're like, we use honor all the time, we talk about it. Do we actually know what it means? Like, have we actually explored theologically what it means to honor? And so we did, as all good Bible learning people do, is we pulled up some resources and what is the word in the Hebrew. And actually it's super interesting because in Deuteronomy, the word used in the 10 Commandments for honor, this translated honor, is this word kaved. And so we started looking up where else does this word show up. And I started looking at it, and I got to this passage in Genesis where God says that the sins of Sodom and Gomorrah were grievous. And that word that's translated grievous in Genesis is the same word kaved that is translated honor in the 10 Commandments. Oh. Which really feels confusing to our framework of thinking about honor. Yeah. What is the connection between these two? But in the Hebrew, and full caveat, I am not a Hebrew scholar or an Old Testament scholar, but I did reach out to a friend of mine who is a biblical scholar and said, how close to heresy am I getting? And he's like, no, like this, the honor shame culture. And so I've done some more research, but the reason this same word is used in both of these places is the meaning of the word kaved is about ascribing right weight. It has to do with weightiness. How significant, how weighty, how heavy, how consequential is something. And so to honor something is to ascribe it appropriate weight. Which means that there's an element in honoring that requires honesty. That if I am calling something by a different name, or if I am treating something heavy as if it is light, that's not honoring. And if I am treating something light as if it is heavy, that is not honoring. And it creates a little bit of room to say, we might need to rethink how we conceptualize, talk about, and engage honor, because to name something as damaging is equally as honoring as to name something as life-giving, if they are both true. If your actions damage something, to honor that is to call it as damaging, to ascribe the appropriate weight. And if your actions brought life to something, then to honor that is to name it as such, to ascribe the right weight to the thing that was done.
Wow.
I told you I was going to turn this a little sideways.
Yeah, that's really interesting.
Thinking through the implications of that, yeah. It's honor your father and it's honor your father and mother, for this is right. It's the right thing to do, to ascribe it a weight. I'm just like wrestling now, right? as we're processing this.
Yeah. And here's one of the places that I think we've inverted this unintentionally, that has some pretty significant implications for us, and we'll unpack this a little bit more in the Brave Conversations, but I'll name this here, is in our culture, we talk a lot about intention versus impact.
Sure.
What was someone's intention? What was the impact that they had? Psychologically, intentions are not very weighty. Impact is very weighty. That my intentions don't necessarily cause harm or not cause harm. It is the impact of the thing that I did that actually carries the weight. That me hugging you is far more significant than the thought that I had about you before I hugged you. What me punching you has a different impact than me being mad at you in my head. And not equating this, I'm not arguing what Jesus says about the things that are in our head and the things outside of our head are equal value in the eyes of God in that place. But what I'm talking about has to do with the weightiness of what transpires. And part of my concern is in our culture, we have ascribed more weight to intentions than we have to impact. And so we have begun to name, and this is how we move past harm without allowing that harm to be healed, that we move too quickly. This has to do with what accountability looks like or doesn't look like, is that when we hear someone had good intentions, that's where we put the weight. And we like to take the weight off of what was the impact of that, regardless of their intentions. And I would actually argue that that's not honoring at all, because it's calling the light thing heavy and the heavy thing light.
So what are the implications then of how honor has been treated in our church context then?
Yeah, I think when we have not given ourselves room to pay attention to what actually is weighty, we unintentionally inhibit healing. Because when we rush to, and I'm using like the intentions impact kind of an analogy, when I rush to honor someone's intention without ascribing the appropriate weight to the impact, the person where the impact has been received, where hurt has been experienced, in many ways, they're left in the dark to try to heal alone. Because for them to try to raise the flag that actually this hurt me more than is being acknowledged is now held in a framework that to do so now dishonors the person whose intentions were good. And so it's not surprising to me that we have many community contexts that people walk around carrying unspoken pain.
Yeah.
And that even though we can spend 20 years in a church community and somehow not be healed, that we can walk through the doors with our own traumatic stories and our own experiences, and 25 years later, that trauma is still unhealed and those stories are still unnamed, because in this way, we begin to train people that we tell good stories and we don't tell hard stories. We pay attention to what is beautiful and we discount or dismiss the things that aren't beautiful, because we've associated honor with pretty and beautiful and kind and good and lovely. And I like those things. And when those things are true, we want to honor them by ascribing the right weight. But when that's the only way that we're viewing this concept of honor, man, the hard, weighty things just are left in the dark. And I believe that Jesus came to bring us life and life abundantly, which requires and necessitates healing and participation. And I grieve the number of pastors who walk around with heavy things, their own experiences, their own actions, the things that they walk around with that eventually lead to burnout or to moral failure or to hating ministry, because it is complicated and hard, because we somewhere along the lines disallowed ourselves from naming a thing as it is. And we start minimizing and shaping things in what we're saying is a desire to honor, which actually is not a very honorable thing to do.
Yeah. Yeah, so you're kind of, as within ministry, I'm thinking out loud here just a little bit, as you're walking through and you're dealing with these things, but you feel like you have to honor in what you have thought, but you're still, it's almost like a dualistic way of living within it. And so of course there's going to become this, conflict internally that it breeds, contempt and all of the other things. It's really, really fascinating when you think of it in that kind of, the original translation of the word.
Mm-hmm.
It's a really, really interesting thought process of how that directly impacts my ministry.
Yes. And I think we really like the Ten Commandments translated word. I don't know that we like the Genesis translated word, where can we take account of the things within our own church structures and systems and our own relationships and our own marriages and our own ways of parenting that actually are grievous.
Yeah.
That's a much less pleasant conversation.
Yeah. Wow.
I think implications as well comes even in some more micro ways of, I don't think we pay attention to the concept of weightiness very much at all. And one of the things that it can do is we engage around what we say our values are or our missions are, that we might use words that sound like big, weighty words, but haven't actually shifted the weight of the community behind those words. That actually we may have shifted the weight of our community around other things. Like we might say, hey, we are a missional church, but the weight of our resources, the weight of our time, the weight of what the stories that we tell actually center around our Sunday programming.
Right. Yep.
And so it actually creates a dishonorable context where what we are saying is weighty is not actually treated as weighty. And the things that we're saying are not as weighty are treated as if they're weighty. And so I think it happens relationally, it happens organizationally, in a lot of ways. And to me, it comes back to, can we call a thing what it is?
Yeah.
Which is a kind of major underpinning of this whole framework of honor.
Do you have any suggestion in how to begin to have, maybe it goes back to our last conversation we had and the safer conversation, but how do we move forward?
Yeah, it's not an accident that we did a series on becoming relationally safer that then is followed by honor, because right, to become more honest is inherently risky. And I think so much of relationship has broken down over the years and become really challenging that we get in hot messes all the time. And so I would say we don't start this from the pulpit. We don't start this from the top. We actually start this in the relationships where there is some degree of safety, that we say, can we begin to become more honest? Can we begin to name what is weighty and what is not weighty in my experience? So we start in the context where we have some relational stability. You start with the people that there is some trust with, not just we're not going to start just running to someone and be like, oh, you're a terrible person, or like if there isn't relationship, that's going to break down really fast. Now we're going to be in arguments. And so that's the context in which we start. The concept that we're going to start with, and again, little throw in the ring for brave conversations. We'll unpack this a little bit more there as well. But the distinction between data and our interpretation of the data becomes really important if we're going to talk about honor. In functionally, so often, the data being, this is a thing that occurred. These are words that were said. This was an action that was done. That is not assigning right, wrong, good, bad, what you meant by that, whether or not it was intended. We're simply looking at a data point of an experience, something that happened, something that was said, something that took place, kind of factual, if we will. There is a fact of data. But we all then have our interpretations of all of those facts. That this person did this because they meant this. This person did this because they were trying this, or this was their motivation, or this was their heart, or this is what they're trying to use this for. And there's this interpretation that sits right alongside the data. And actually, I think for most of us, we have fused the data point with our interpretation of the data point.
Yep.
So actually, when someone does something, we don't even say, hey, you did this. This is what I think it meant. We just jump right to, you were trying to do this. You were trying to cause me harm. You're a bad person. You are manipulating. And we fuse these and we've grabbed the interpretation. The challenge is our interpretations are not always wrong. That actually many of us have come to trust our interpretations because of how often it is right. And the more you work with people, the more you lead, we can come to some pretty accurate interpretations of motivation and cause and effect and where this is going to go. And yet we still need to pull these apart, because the conversation about honor is the conversation about the data point, not about the interpretation. Yeah. It is about what was the weightiness of this particular moment, of this particular conversation, of this particular experience, of the way that you looked at me in this moment, of the way that you spoke to me in this moment, of the disappointment because there was something that was promised to me that then didn't come to be, and there's a weightiness in that experience. And if we cannot separate the data point from the interpretation, we actually will never be able to ascribe right weight to the data point. And we're going to be trying to ascribe right weight to the interpretation, which we're going to argue about until Jesus returns.
Right.
Because
right.
we all have our perspectives and defenses and personal backstory to how we interpret moments. But if we can honor the experience, the thing that took place, for the weightiness with which it is held, that gives us a path forward. But we have to start with the relationships we have, and we have to start by separating and distinguishing the data point from our interpretation. That would be the starting spot.
Yeah.
So it's not a quick fix.
Yeah. Super easy.
No. Well, it's to draw back to the previous conversation and the theme of safer, right? And relational safety. Same thing. I can't just declare it, right? It's something that if you're developing culture, that just doesn't happen overnight. It's actually something that it's a long obedience in the right direction, same direction, and so I always flub that, but it's still weighty. So there you go. Yes. But it's going to take some time. One of the things we did talk about in the last conversation that I'm also curious within this, and you have hit a little bit on it, but what are some of the risks that would come with pursuing this type of a culture in the way of, I love what you said. Can we just call this a thing what it is?
Right. Yeah. Well, and the risk is that we wouldn't be able to separate intention from impact, or we wouldn't be able to separate the interpretation from the data point. And so the way that we would approach it is going to be reacting to our own interpretations, or I will be attempting to talk about a data point, but you will hear your interpretation of that data point. So you will defend your interpretation when I'm trying to talk about the data point. And so the risk is that actually we try to engage conversations of honor without having developed the skills to be able to have those conversations.
Yeah.
And so that's where the start, like the skill being, can we acknowledge that this moment has both the thing that happened and why we think that happened and what we think that thing meant, that both of those exist. We don't need to eliminate any of them, but we need to be able to separate them. And that has to be modeled. Most of us were not taught how to do that. We just grow up in a world where we just engage in the way that everyone else engages, which is us beating each other over the head with our interpretations of what took place and never being able to separate, okay, what's the thing we're actually talking about? Okay, what's the weightiness in this? Did this produce life in you, or did this produce death in you?
Yeah.
We need to be able to name this thing was death producing, or this thing was life producing. And in doing so, we honor that thing. Then we can have conversations about our interpretations and why it made us mad, or what that kicked up onto, and how that connects to the whole rest of my story. And all of those stories matter, but that first skill of being able to separate those. And so attempting to engage honor differently without developing some skills would be a massive risk.
Yeah.
Well, one other risk that I want to mention is I think it would be naive to think that we could attempt to reconfigure how we engage, think about, utilize honor, and that other people aren't going to have strong reactions to that. Because there are many people for whom our historic framework of honor protects, makes comfortable, doesn't challenge.
Yeah.
And those people have the most to lose if we reconfigure how we're holding and engaging honor. And so I just think it would be unwise, is where we want to be careful about who we start this with, about where we start having these conversations, slowly building and shaping the culture, because it likely would be quite disruptive for many people. And some of us are those people. I'm going like, I actually can we go back to like, speak kindly of me. Yeah. So this is why this is the topic for our Brave Conversations for July, August, September with Church Wellco, because we need to find some people that we can grapple with this with. We need to find some people that we can experiment with. How do we have these conversations? We need to have some people where we can pull apart, okay, what is the data point here and what is my interpretation? Do I even know how to tell the difference? And when we pull that apart, how do we then honor and name the data point while still having room to tell stories about the implications and the intentions and all of the interpretations of that? And we need to do that with people. And so that's really a big part behind the Brave Conversations, is not just being information dump as webinars, but actually gathering some people together who say, okay, I want to understand more about this, but I also want to wrestle this out with other people who want to wrestle it out with me too. And so I think for those that would be listening, if you are interested, if you are a pastor, a church leader, someone who is engaged in leadership in relationship, I just want to invite you to come join. Churchwell.co is the website where you can find all the information on our trainings tab. You can register to come once and just test it, check it out, see what it is like. No commitment is necessary. Also, you can register just to be kept in the loop and come to each month and participate in that way. And so I hope that for those who are intrigued by this, who want to hear a little bit more about it, come and sign up, churchwell.co. And this series kicks off July 2026.
It's awesome. It's awesome. And we will make the link available to those that maybe are listening and not able to get to it. I'm going to get to it later in the episode show notes. BrianJames, thank you once again for partnering with us. Once again, just robust conversation, and just so glad that we get to continue partnering with you, with Church Wilco, and especially with these Brave Conversations.
Yes, thanks for having me. I love doing this with you.
Thanks again for listening. If you'd like to connect with our guest, we have made ways to do so available in the episode show notes. And if you'd like to connect with us further, support the podcast, or sign up for show updates, just go to withouthatingit.com to get started. And don't forget to subscribe to Ministry Without Hating It wherever it is that you get your podcasts so you don't miss out on our future episode releases. Thanks again for listening, and we'll see you next time. Good?